Hi everyone, welcome to the 1570 Project. It's another fun 1570 Friday. That's my podcast name, Bethany. It's sort of an inside joke from my husband's podcast. But long story short, I've invited Bethany Mandel to come on with me today, who's awesome. She's a huge inspiration for me. I know a lot of people are always impressed that I managed to homeschool 4 kids and repair the house and still show up on a podcast with Tom 5 days a week and do my own
podcast. Wow.
We do, yeah. So Tom and I do a show 5 days a week, and then I do an additional show once a week, and then I produce my sister's true crime podcast once a week. So
that's legit.
So we're busy, but I have to say it's people like Bethany that have made me think that it's even possible to do something like this. When I sat down last year and the schools were like, yeah, we're not really going to go back the way that you think of school per se. And I went, oh no, I have 4 kids. What am I going to do? And, I thought maybe I can actually homeschool them. Maybe I'm smart enough to do this and capable of doing this. And, there are people out there who do it and still have a life and do other things. And it's really exciting, and I initially thought it was just for the year, and I was even until this spring, I was still thinking maybe they'll take back the mask thing by the fall, when it was May, and they were like, look, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask anymore, there's no more cases, everything's going away, things are great. I was like, maybe it will be normal, and maybe the kids can go back to school and have friends, and now I'm just feeling so depressed. I'm really? How did this happen? How did we get back to this place?
How did we get back to this place? I mean, I think because the groundwork was laid and the precedent was set, and now any cases send people into a spiral. There was a reporter, I think she's with Bloomberg News. Mm-hmm. Her name was, it's a super Jewish name. I think it was Shira Stein, I want to say.
Yeah.
Shifra Stein.
I think it's Shira.
She tweeted last night. Delta scares me like nothing else, and I'm like, oh well, this is why COVID healthcare reporting is so bat guano. It's because the people who are doing the reporting need help. Honestly, I have this theory that I developed in college. I need to come up with a name for it, but basically what it is everyone I went to college with who was a nutrition major had an eating disorder. Every person who was a psych major was trying to cure themselves of their own issues. Mm-hmm. The communications majors had severe social anxiety and were trying to cure themselves of it by learning how to communicate in college. There's a lot of other similar examples, but those were sort of the more glaring ones. I think that people with deep neuroses and OCD and germophobia and hypochondria, all of these things related to health, became health reporters, because this is their interest. This is the thing that keeps them up at night. But now they're writing all of this coverage, and they're setting the tone for our response, but they are absolute germaphobes and psychotic and have not left their houses in the last year and a half, and who are double masking with N95s and wearing latex gloves and face shields to Trader Joe's.
Right. I think for me, the moment when I realized that this was just primarily a lot of people's psychological problem was last year during the school year, when our school was starting to slowly ease back into having more kids be at school. And one of the parents posted on our community Facebook group how horrified she was that the school hadn't notified her that there were going to be more kids than there had been on the bus that week. And that her daughter came home petrified that she was going to kill her parents because there were more kids than there had been on the bus. And her parents had told her that the reason there were so few kids on the bus with her this year was that, if there were more kids, if they were packed too close together, that she was going to get COVID and kill her parents. So her kid came home terrified. And I was like, how can you do that to your kid? How can you go out there and tell your kid that they're going to kill you if they're near other children? I know.
It was funny. I was talking to one of my best friends, and we were sort of talking about the educational impact of all of this last year and a half on poor and minority kids. And I was like, we have screwed an entire generation, and kids like ours are fine. And she was like, no, 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 no. Our kids are fine. But the kids of the sort of upper middle class and middle class pajama class people, of which I think we count, because my husband worked from home in his pajamas for a year and a half, most of their peers have been driven absolutely crazy with fear by their parents over the last year and a half. We've been, I think you can guess, extremely laid back, but we're being a little bit more cautious for the next couple weeks because we have a 3-week-old. Right. And so we really don't want him to get COVID in the next couple weeks, because a fever opens like a really unpleasant Pandora's box for a newborn.
You don't even want RSV or any of these other things
that
is floating around. Like, forget COVID. There's plenty of things to worry about with a newborn.
Yeah, so we're being more careful for the next couple weeks. And the thing that's going around our community is COVID right now, but if it would be the same situation if the thing that we're going around were RSV or the measles. But my 4-year-old woke up in the middle of the night last night screaming that he had COVID. He had a nightmare that he had COVID. And I was just like, we're doing something wrong. And what we're I think in my mind doing wrong is that we kind of explained to him that we aren't sending them on the bus because we don't want them around kids in close quarters like that. But we shouldn't have said that. We shouldn't have used that excuse, because now our 4-year-old is waking up screaming that he's terrified that he has COVID. But that's the norm for all of these parents for the last year and a half. And I don't understand why no one is kind of like having a gut check because that, to me, last night, I was like, we are talking about COVID too much. That was a danger sign that we're talking about COVID too much.
Well, yeah. And I think a lot of those parents would say, like, well, it's not my fault. Like, I didn't scare my kid. I didn't teach them that. That's just how the world is. And I told my kid the realistic fears of COVID, and it's actually all you like anti-masking, anti-vaxxers' fault that this has even happened, that we're even at this point. And that's why my kid is scared. And it didn't have to come to this. If you had just done what you were supposed to do all along, it's all your fault anyway.
Right. Yeah. It is their fault and it's my fault. We are the ones who are they're not getting it out of thin air. If they're exposed to the radio or the media, that's on us for exposing them to it. And I've been extremely careful over the last year and a half to shield them from the hysterical coverage. I turned down NPR, all those things. But yeah, it is my fault because I'm the one that's talking to them about COVID. We kind of, we in our family kind of had to walk a line between like really sort of driving it home to him, like, please don't lick the other kid's face at camp, because we don't want you to get sick to bring that home to your brother, because that's something he does. He licks other people's faces. Please don't. So yeah,
well, in a way, our kids are fortunate, like your kids and my kids, because my kids have 3 other kids' faces to lick in our house that they can hang out with.
But how many kids are in our kids' position where they have a bunch of siblings and they have parents who haven't scared the bejesus out of them over the last year and a half and who have obtained a quality education?
Yeah, it's really concerning. And it's concerning because, my kids are going to have to grow up and live in a world with all those other kids too, who are now really, I think, traumatized by the fact that kids are this scared, that a kid, having extra kids on the bus terrifies a kid so much that she comes home to her mom in tears, afraid she's going to kill her parents. I get it. Our kids aren't in a war or a famine or there's a genocide. There's way worse things that can happen to kids. I understand the people who say this isn't that bad. It's not that tough. I get it. But at the same time, this is needless and we're doing it to them for no reason. And I was so hopeful this spring that we have a really good vaccine. I took the vaccine. My husband took the vaccine. The cases went down. Everything seemed like it was going in the right direction. And now we're just back to total hysteria. And I just if we're at hysteria over this, I don't see where the end point is, because I've looked and I don't know. I feel betrayed by the CDC, to be honest, because
100%.
I'm like a person that, I mean, I'm pretty mainstream, but I have a lot of people like in my world and in my community who are like very skeptical of the vaccine for a lot of reasons. And, you know, and they've been telling me all along, this is never going to end. It doesn't matter if you take the vaccine. I'm talking to my friend Bethany.
Hi, sweetheart.
And it's never going to end. They're never going to let you go back to normal. It doesn't matter who takes the vaccine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The vaccine doesn't really work. You can still spread the disease if you have the vaccine. And now I feel like the CDC just came out and confirmed all of that. And like my phone over the last 3 days has just been blown up with people saying, I told you so. Never should have taken it. Now I'm never going to take it. And I don't understand why they've blown up, as far as I can see from people I know who are hesitant to take the vaccine, they've blown up any chance for ever convincing a lot of those people now.
Yes.
Like just this week.
I'm in the same boat. I mean, I have lots of these friends on Instagram, and I'm curious. I've been watching their Instagram stories because I was also convinced to take the vaccine while I was pregnant, no less. Mm-hmm. And my husband also took the vaccine when I was pregnant. Not that like my pregnancy mattered as far as him taking the vaccine, but now all of these friends that I'm like, and they're all just posting screenshots of the CDC. That's all they're doing. Right. They are completely taking a victory lap, and that's it. And there was one friend who was spooked. We have a mutual friend who is on a ventilator right now. She's pregnant, and she has been on a ventilator for a week, and it's bad. It's a bad situation. Mm-hmm. And of our circle, the other people that know her that had not gotten their vaccines have been spooked over the last week, because it's pretty scary seeing a friend of yours go from fine to on a ventilator in 3 days.
Right.
And then the CDC happened, and now they're all like, ooh, that was a close call. I almost got the vaccine, but nope. And
right. I think they still haven't even acknowledged how much damage that they've done just this week with this messaging, and for what? And to get vaccinated people to wear masks now in blue states only, probably not even like in Texas or Florida, but like in blue states, you're going to have vaccinated people wear masks now. How many lives will be saved by that versus the lives that would have been saved if a couple more people had taken the vaccine, maybe if they had just been quiet and let things go. That's what bothers me, is it's just the risk assessment between coming out with this message with absolutely no data to back it up, as far as I can tell. I mean,
I haven't seen convincing data. I'm going to say something that could get me canceled. Mm-hmm. Is it the worst thing in the world for unvaccinated people to be getting the virus and show their compatriots what that experience is like? Because I have lots of friends right now getting COVID. Some of them are vaccinated and some of them are not. And from my vantage point, I see a difference in the outcomes pretty clearly. Mm-hmm. And would it have been the worst thing in the world to just let it play out and let people make their own judgment calls based on the things that were happening in front of their eyes?
Right. I think that people being able to see the actual results of vaccination or not vaccination would have made a big difference. I mean, for me, that was why I ultimately decided to get vaccinated this like late March, early April, was because I'd seen a lot of people get vaccinated and they weren't dropping like flies. So I went like, okay, seems pretty safe to me. I think we're good. Like 50 million people have taken the vaccine now. I think it's okay. And I think that, that people pay attention. I know that, the government doesn't always think people are paying attention to what they're doing, but people are paying attention and they're making mental notes. And I think that the number of people who now won't take the vaccine because the CDC essentially came out this week and said, Alex Berenson is absolutely 100% right. The vaccine totally doesn't work. Yep. That was their statement this week, based on absolutely nothing that I can find that backs it up. Supposedly, it's like past noon on Friday now. Supposedly, they're going to give us the data today, but I still have seen nothing except their leaked internal document that just says the same stuff that we all knew, that some vaccinated people can get sick and that, they can occasionally spread the virus if they have enough virus in their respiratory tract. But this idea that an asymptomatic vaccinated person is walking around spreading virus to a bunch of other people is exactly the thing that all my friends who have been nervous about the vaccine have been telling me for months, and that I have been saying to them does not match everything that I know about infectious diseases, everything that I've seen play out in the data from Israel, from the UK, from all these places. And now, like, based on nothing, we're just going to say, like, yeah, you're absolutely right. The vaccine sucks. It's terrible. And I don't understand. I literally don't understand how the president can then go out and say, like, no, you should definitely get the vaccine. It's great after this week. I mean, like, did they hear what their own agency said? It just boggles my mind.
Yeah. And not only that, during the last press briefing, they actually were like, we trust the CDC. We place our faith in the CDC. They are straight shooters. And to hear the vote of confidence from the Biden administration to the CDC after this week was, and in terms of their decision to perhaps re-implement lockdowns and re-implement mitigation strategies, which are catastrophic and not actually helpful. And for them to cite their trust in the CDC with and explain their decision-making process in the future about lockdowns, I was like, all right, well, it was a good country while we had it. And now it's over, because we don't survive this. This constant back and forth volleyball game that we're playing is just, it's not tenable. I have friends who they work in sort of the vacation industry, and they plan Passover programs, they plan conferences, all of these things, and they've taken the week off. They're like, yeah, we're not going to plan anything, because obviously planning makes no difference, and I'm going to throw tens of thousands of dollars into a deposit that I'm going to lose. So I'm not putting a deposit down on the hotel. I'm not putting a deposit down with the caterer. I cannot make plans this way, and so I'm going to let my business fold. Basically, is what it comes down to.
Right, and I think a lot of people are thinking that way. Like, I can't plan ahead for the future, even in terms of the schools, right? Like, our schools ended the school year with 5 days a week. Like, yes, everyone's masked. Yes, they're all like, they can't share anything in school. They all have to stay at their desk all day and everything. And, like, I was thinking for my child who's supposed to be in kindergarten this fall, like, they can't go around to, like, different stations in the classroom. They can't do different stuff. They have to stay at their desk because they can't share anything. And I think about it and I'm like, I can't, even if they told me they're going to go back to normal, even if they had come back with no masks for September, like, how could I ever trust them again? Yes. How can I ever say, like, I'm going to put my kids back in school and hope you guys don't shut anything, hope you guys don't decide randomly in the middle of the year to make my kid wear a mask, or that everybody has to stay 6 feet apart all day or something else. Like, or like you said, for businesses, like, how do you plan?
No, I have friends in similar positions, and they're making a lot of their professional decisions. I mean, all women, let's be honest. They're making all of their professional decisions around the fact that they don't think that their kids are going to reliably be in school next year. And so, where are the feminists? These are women who have dropped out of the workforce or who have turned down promotions because they're like, I can't promise you 40 hours next year. I'm sorry. I thought I could. I thought I could promise that because I thought I would have had a school system that was operational. To me, I'm starting to wonder at what point businesses start saying, like, maybe it makes financial and logistical sense for us to pick up and move. One of the sort of examples that I can think of is the Daily Wire, the Ben Shapiro's company. Right. They picked up out of LA and they moved their entire staff to Nashville. Wow. And now their staff can send their kids to school and not be afraid that it's going to be canceled on a Wednesday for 3 months or 6 months or the rest of the year. Right. And so that kind of gives their businesses a lot of stability that they would not have had in LA.
Right. And I think that we're going to see that kind of happening more and more, especially with the mask stuff, because even I'm pretty moderate on COVID interventions, I think. Like, I was initially for the initial 2 weeks to slow the spread when we had no tests and we had no anything, and we, didn't have any PPE. We didn't have ventilators. We needed to make sure our hospitals weren't overrun, like all that stuff. Like I said, I think we have to shut down for a minute and see what's going on. And then, once again, I feel like betrayed by the government that I put trust that they could do this on a scale where it made sense. And then when there was no more need for it, they could back off. But they obviously have just proven that they can't back off at all. And now I was pretty much done with masks by this spring because I think the data was pretty clear that it was not a really significant factor in stopping viral spread. But, I put up with it. We're in Massachusetts and I put up with it. They finally ended it at the end of May of this year, and I threw out every mask we had in the house. And I said, I'm not buying these anymore. We're done. If there are places that are going to ask us to wear them, then we're just not going to go to those places because I'm done with that. And now, we haven't put a mandate back in yet, but obviously if the CDC is saying this, it's coming. And I'm going, what do? Do we just order our groceries from now on? Because I'm not going to now go back to buying masks and putting them back on my kids. Like, I sent them a couple days a week all last year to like a play center where they could play with other kids for 3 hours, and they had to wear a mask for the 3 hours. But I figured like, at least they're seeing some other kids and it's fine for them. Like, not going to do it again this year. I'm just not. I know.
That's where we are too.
So do we just like now move out of state? Like, is that the only other option? Do we go to Florida and call it a day because we want to live somewhere where we can make a decision like that? I mean, I don't know, but I think it is going to be more and more split because the people that don't want to put up with this are going to take steps to, move away from states that are making decisions like this.
Yeah, no, I mean, you and I are basically in the same exact boat. We're also like I stopped making my kids wear masks around the springtime this year, and it was funny. I dropped all my kids off at camp this morning, and my 4-year-old, I like sort of modify an adult mask for him because I have like packages of disposable masks. And his teacher was like, this is like laughable. I'm like, well, I don't care because this is literally the last day that he's wearing a mask. I am only masking them so they can come to this summer camp. And like, I haven't masked them to go into a supermarket in forever. And like, you can say something to me about it. Whenever they reinstitute the mask mandate, which will of course happen, the supermarket can say something to me or they cannot, because like, it doesn't matter. It's hard to like remember that I'm on a podcast and this is actually going to go live, but we're in the same boat. Like, I don't want to raise my children if this is what life is like.
Never seeing another human face day in, day out. Like, it's just...
I mean, I'm not signing my kids up for any activities next year outside of my daughter's one pre-existing thing that she's done for several years. I'm not signing my kids up for any new activities in which they have to wear masks.
I didn't renew any of my museum memberships that we like to go to museums or any of those things because I'm not doing, like, I'm not going to pay you $300 for the pleasure of not being able to breathe for 4 hours at the museum. It's ridiculous. And I mean, I don't know what to do. Like, I do feel like I'm at a little bit of a breaking point with the kids and the masks and the school and everything. And I like it is a question for me of like, do we pick up and move? Because I don't want to be around people all the time who like every play date is outside in their yard with our kid with masks on. Like, I can't. I
won't do that again. I mean, thankfully we have a small but sane group of friends who we can have normalcy with. But is that enough? I don't know. I mean, what kind of scares me is that if we stay in this area, then this is where my kids are from. Like, I'm from Long Island, and they're going to say I'm from suburban Maryland, and they're going to want to maintain a connection to this area because this is their childhood home. And do I want them going to college here and meeting a potential future spouse who was raised by absolute freaking psychos? Do I want my future in-laws to be absolute freaking psychos and my children's potential future spouses to be the byproducts of hysteria over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't want, as it is, most of the kids in this area, I don't want my kids to be friends with, and I certainly don't want them to form emotional connections with or romantic connections with down the line. Like, none of this goes in a good direction. And
right.
None of this is how I want to raise my children.
Right. I'm reminded, honestly, so my husband and I interviewed for our podcast Rod Dreher last year when he had his new book out. And it's funny because I asked him in that interview, I said, like, you got so much criticism when the Benedict option came out, right? Because it was like, this is so wacko and crazy. You're all going to leave the world. Like, this is nuts. And then, like, when the pandemic happened, it was like, maybe this isn't so crazy. And, like, I kind of, especially over the last few weeks with people around me making clear that they just want to live like this forever, I've been thinking more and more like, maybe Rod Dreher was more prescient than even I imagined. That, like,
right? I know.
That, you know, I am going to have to deliberately go out and form community with people who are not, you know, just the people who live around me, but form a community of people who are like-minded about how to raise kids and, you know, what kind of community we want to be and the type of families that we want to raise and all these things, because the people, the generic public, like, around me is obviously not on the same page with this. And, like, I can't coexist normally with people who are living this way. And it's not, I don't know, I feel bad. Like, somebody asked me, they were like, what do you tell people when they ask why you're not sending your kids back to school again next year? And I said, like, well, because I don't think it's developmentally good for my kids to wear a mask 40 hours a week and, like, not interact with other kids in a normal way. And they said, well, but then doesn't the other person feel like you're judging them, or that you're, like, criticizing their parenting, that you would say that? And I said, I don't know, like, maybe I'm Serbian, so maybe I'm just naturally kind of rude. Like, we're just blunt people. But I mean, maybe it is offensive to them, or maybe I am insulting them, but I don't know what else to say at this point, because I really strongly feel that that's true. Like, what else? Yes. How else can I say it? Yes. I think it's nuts.
And I think we all need to understand the deal with the devil that we're all making. And we're all making different deals with the devil. The deal with the devil that I'm making is that we still live here. And the deal with the devil that they're making is that they're making their kids go to school 40 hours a week in a mask. And maybe that's worth it to them, but they need to acknowledge that they are making a deal with the devil, and there are ramifications for that. And they will be emotional, they will be developmental, they will be social, but there is no way covering a child's face with a dirty piece of cloth for 8 hours a day comes with no downsides. And it's crazy to me that our betters and our experts are all pretending as though that's not the case. It is so clearly not in the best interest of children to have a dirty piece of cloth over their face all day.
Right. And the risks to children from COVID are so low comparatively. I mean, I even thought that when this thing came out from the CDC, this leaked PowerPoint, and they're saying it spreads as easily as chicken pox. And I'm like, okay. And we don't cover kids' faces for chicken pox every year. No. So, like, why would we do it for this?
In my neighborhood, there was a massive outbreak. There's a daycare where a mom gave it to her kid. A mom was she was hospitalized. She gave it to her kids, and her kids, it went through the entire, it's like a daycare summer camp situation. And there are dozens of kids in my community right now with COVID. And I'm hearing about all of these families because people are, like, organizing grocery store runs and whatever for the families. And, you know, I'm like, yeah, I dropped off the cucumbers and the milk. How is so-and-so doing? They're like, oh, she was just sick. Saturday night, she threw up once. She had a little bit of cough on Sunday morning, and now and that's my baby. And now she's, like, going stir crazy. And she was sick for 12 hours, and sick entailed one vomit and a little bit of a cough the next morning, and that was it. And now the kid is fine, and now going stir crazy. And that's the situation for every kid in my neighborhood. And there are probably at least a dozen kids in my neighborhood who have it right now, if not more. And I've heard from a lot of these families, because a lot of the families have 3 or 4 kids each, and so that's, you know, the cases. And no one has said anything beyond the kid was even sick for more than 18 hours, let alone like sick enough to go to a doctor or sick enough to go to a hospital. Like it was
But like you
they
point out,
wouldn't have
most of
gotten
them,
a test had they not been exposed.
right, most of them got it from somebody else in their house, from an adult, which is what we've seen with COVID spread among kids anyways. They're not getting it really from the other kids at the school. Generally, they're getting it from their parents and other people that live in their home.
That's how the outbreak started, but now it's going through the kids.
So they have spread it at school.
Yeah, they have spread it to some degree. I mean, every kid in the school doesn't have it. There's like a handful of kids, but like, have we ever done this for RSV?
No.
When RSV kills?
Never. Not for chickenpox, not for flu, not for anything else.
Not for the measles, nothing.
No, we've never. I mean, maybe there's been times when a school has shut down for a day when they have a high number of kids that have something all at once, a day or two, and they like sanitize everything and then invite the kids back. But this idea that we're going to completely change everything we know about childhood development, and especially like speech and reading development and among younger kids, I can't believe that we're doing it. And it's so out of step with the rest of the globe too. That's what blows my mind, is there's plenty of countries in Europe that haven't been masking kids under 11 or 12 at all this whole time. And they haven't had significantly more spread of the virus in the community. So
no, I have a friend who she just spent a year in England, and she just came back and was like, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to do what? And not just with her older kids, but she has a 2-year-old. Right. And she's like, I'm sorry, you expect a 2-year-old to be in a mask all day? What?
All day. And then what the other parents say is, well, they'll get used to it. They'll get used to it. One of my like community Facebook pages, a parent like questioned it, and the comment section was full of moms like, yeah, my 3-year-old goes to daycare. I drop her off in the early morning at 8:30 and we pick her up after school care time at 5:30. She wears the mask the whole time except for snacks. She's fine. She forgets to take it off. She loves it now. She reminds me. And I'm like, well, that's great that she got used to it, but like...
And I'm not comparing masks to child abuse because I don't think that they are child abuse. That being said, I had an unconventional childhood that I would not replicate. Love my mother, would not replicate my childhood. I got used to the rotating cast of boyfriends in our house, and my mother never being home, and like I got used to a lot of stuff because you don't know any better.
Right.
And now as an adult, I can see my childhood for what it was, and it was not ideal. But kids can get used to a lot of things. It doesn't mean that it's good for them. Our role as parents is to discern what is good and what is healthy and what is not. The fact, I mean, I'm hearing it constantly too. People are constantly saying, well, my kid is used to it. Okay, well, you can get your kid used to a lot of things. Doesn't make it right. And you're dropping the ball by not advocating for your child. Right.
It comes to a point where it's like, you know... Like I said, again, like about, am I judging other people? Like, well, I guess kind of, yeah, I am judging other people a little bit, but I don't think it's healthy and I don't think it's good and I don't want it for my kids. So if people feel judged by me making that decision, then...
Well, it's not like they're not judging us too. Like,
that's true too. They're out there judging too. It's true.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just went to Trader Joe's with some of my kids, and I haven't made my kids wear a mask in forever. And I have been getting looks this whole time from parents. The worst looks that I get are from other parents of kids similar ages to mine, where their kids are wearing masks, and they kind of look at me like, my kid's wearing a mask, why can't yours? I'm like, because I don't hate my kid, that's why. Like, if we're going to play this game, my kid isn't in a mask because I don't hate them.
Right. Yeah, because I'm not trying to, you know, make them be a part of a whole charade to make me feel good and my mental problems around a virus that's outside of my control. But I think, you know, too, I think it does come down to like people being able to control their circumstances. And it's something I've noticed like about a lot of parenting decisions is that a lot of it comes down to like fear of things being outside of your own control.
Yeah, scary things. I mean, one of the things that I write about a lot is when parents sort of blame other parents who have accidentally left their kids in the car and the kids have died in hot cars, or a kid drowns, or like any of these sorts of horrible, tragic accidents. The first impulse from a lot of parents' perspectives is to blame the parent whose child died. I would never do that. What kind of parent does that? Because they cannot handle the possibility that something senseless and something horrifying and something tragic can happen to any of us at any given time.
Right.
And instead of acknowledging that and living with that, they choose to victim blame. And it's really, really sad, and it doesn't make their child any safer. Because for me, like, I acknowledge that anything can happen at any point, and I try to set up sort of safeguards for myself. Like, I count my kids when I get in the car and when I get out of the car. And because I acknowledge I am human, I am fallible, and I could leave someone in the car.
Right.
And that would be horrifying. But this has been a trend. I mean, this is helicopter parenting. This is where it all comes from. They all think that they can prevent something tragic if they never stop watching their child and doing everything for their child and being everything for their child, when the illusion of control is simply an illusion.
Right. And I mean, I see it even like with small stuff. Like, one of my kids has really bad allergies. And like, every time I say it to somebody goes like, oh, your kid's allergic to eggs. Have you tried free range eggs? Did you feed them organic eggs? Did you eat it during pregnancy? Did you avoid it during pregnancy? Like, they're trying to figure out like what I did to have my kid have an allergy, because, and I like, at first I was like kind of offended by it. And then I just realized like, it's just because they're just scared it could happen to them. And they want to know, they want reassurance that I want to see you do it. It's great. That they just want to know that there's a reason that it happened to me, so that they know how to avoid it happening to them, so that they can feel good about it. And like, and I think a lot of this COVID stuff comes down to that. Like, well, if we wear a mask, if we open this window, if we do this thing, if we get tested, if we stay 6 feet apart, and like, it's tough to acknowledge that like maybe diseases don't always like follow all these rules that we set out for them, and maybe they spread in other ways that we didn't anticipate, and maybe the things that we think are stopping them aren't really stopping them, or whatever else it is.
Yeah. But I have one of my favorite books is Steve Silberman. He wrote an incredible book about autism called Neurotribes, and he wrote a lot about the history of autism, and the number one thing that they thought caused it for a really long time in the like 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s was something called refrigerator moms. And it was basically just mommy shaming. It was like, well, your kid is autistic because you did X, Y, and Z to them. And they could not get past this idea that children were born with developmental and neuroatypical behaviors for a reason that was not the mother's fault, not the parents. It's always the mother's fault. And it's kind of interesting watching how COVID has played out over the last year and a half, because several of my absolute most careful friends are the ones who have gotten it. And meanwhile, like, we haven't been particularly careful. Like, this sort of window of time in the last like week or two where we've been a little bit more careful because of the baby has been an exception. We haven't been careful really at all. We traveled to Florida, we traveled to Utah. We did a Passover program in Utah with like 250 other families all in the same dining room together in March of this year. We went to Colonial Williamsburg several times. We've been eating in restaurants when we're able to. Like, we never got it. But I have friends,
or you might have gotten it and been asymptomatic, and who knows? Like,
so I don't think I did, because I got the antibody test before I got the vaccine, and I didn't have antibodies, and my husband did as well, and he didn't have antibodies either. But my friends who would only go out once a week in that double mask to Trader Joe's and stock up for the whole week, and that was their one and only indoor exposure, they got it. Which I'm kind of like, how did that happen? And I have several friends who were the same. They only had outdoor play dates, distanced and masked, and never went inside anywhere. They only did Instacart. They got it this week too, and I'm like, how? And it just shows you, like, there's no rhyme, there is no reason. It's a virus.
But you can see in the way a lot of people talk about it, like, oh, those people in Florida, they deserved it when they got it. Or that person who didn't get the vaccine, we'll put him on the cover of this newspaper because he chose to get COVID, essentially. It's like, I think that I think it's part of the same phenomenon of the mommy shaming phenomenon, that people just want to know that there's a reason why this person is suffering. And if you can tease out the secret reason why this person's suffering and you're not, then it's okay to like feel good about the fact that it's happening to them. But I just like, I'm so down this week that we're going back into the craziness and the blaming and the shaming over masks and distancing and things being closed and everything else. I mean, based as far as I can tell on absolutely nothing. Like,
I mean, what I'm hoping is that other people are where we are, and things are going to break. There's a lot of friends that I have that are quite liberal who have just had it with the school stuff, who have had it with the mask stuff. I think a lot more people are at a breaking point than there were in May of 2020, which is when I hit a breaking point. I think that a lot of people are done. And I'm curious to see sort of businesses' reactions to this. Are they going to sort of fold and do what they did and say, okay, we're going to have everybody working from home again? Or are they going to say, like, we're not enforcing the mask mandate in the office. Do whatever you want to do. We're done here. Everybody is an adult and everyone can be vaccinated. And it's not up to us as an office and as a place of business to decide to make everyone wear masks. We're not going to make that decision for everybody. But also, like, if you have extenuating circumstances, if you have a newborn in your house, for example, you might want to make different decisions. And everybody is just granted the ability to make a personal risk assessment, which is what we should have done in May of 2020. Everyone should have made a personal risk assessment based on their personal circumstances. And if we were allowed to do that, we didn't have a newborn back then. I wasn't pregnant back then. We would have just been living our lives normally. And there would have been a fair number of us who would have done so, and like maybe others would have followed, and maybe 40% of small businesses wouldn't have closed.
Right. And I mean, even you say May of 2020, I mean, they could have been honest with information even further back. They could have been honest with information about masks back in March of 2020 and maybe saved lives back then by giving people the information to make an informed decision for themselves about whether or not to wear a mask, instead of telling people masks absolutely don't work, that's ridiculous, don't wear a mask, because they wanted to save them for healthcare professionals and, you know, caused a major hit to credibility. The dishonesty is what kills me. I mean, we knew somebody who was a manager in an office in early March, and somebody in the office was immune compromised and said, like, is it possible we could wear masks in the office because I'm immune compromised and I'm getting a little nervous about this whole thing? And HR said, absolutely not. The CDC says masks don't work. They're counterproductive. They're bad. And, you know, like there wasn't an outbreak in that office, but like, I just wonder how many other places things like that happen where people made decisions based on bad information, you know, because the HR departments and everybody else is just going to go by what the government tells them is the right thing to do.
Well, what's extremely frustrating is that here we are in July of 2021 and they're saying mask mandates again. What kind of freaking mask? Let's have that conversation, because the t-shirt over your face is not protecting you from a virus. An N95 would have. Why didn't we go into mass production of actually effective masks and have them available for people? Instead, we told them that they could put a t-shirt over their face and they were protected. And I'm sorry, that's absolute malarkey, to quote our president. And we're still there. We're still in 2020 telling people basically you can trust the floral print t-shirt you have on your face more than you can trust the vaccine. Whereas we should have been telling people the vaccine is absolutely modern medical miracle. Full stop. If you still feel like you need to be wearing a mask, please choose one that is effective. Here are your options. The government has subsidized their mass production and they are available at every post office.
Right. And those masks are effective enough too, just like the vaccine actually, not to put too fine a point on it, but so that if you put on an N95 and it fits you properly, you don't have to be worried about whether or not other people in the building are wearing a mask, because the N95 protects you and you don't have to worry about what the other people are doing. And we should have been sending that message, I mean, for the last year. We should have been telling people, if you're really worried that other people are going to kill you, then you need to wear a mask that actually blocks out viruses and not, you know, a piece of cotton, because it's not going to do that.
Yep.
But I don't know. It makes me hopeful talking to you. Maybe there are other people out there who are saying like enough is enough, really.
I really think there are. I really think people are reaching a breaking point. I mean, I know that there are in my husband's office with the mask mandate in DC. They're just like, people are like, we cannot do this again.
Right.
And I'm hoping, I mean, I'm hearing it also from other moms because we're trying to plan our homeschool activities for next year. And every single one of my mom friends who we homeschool with, because we have like sort of a small but nice circle of folks, every single one of them is like, okay, I'll sign my daughter up for that art class if they don't require masks. And that's where all of us are. Okay, we'll sign them up if that person doesn't require masks. If they do, then we're done.
Yeah, and I'm the same way with it. I am holding back on signing up for all the sports and everything else because, believe it or not, our town continued to require our kids outside playing sports to wear masks out in the open air in the field. All the little 5-year-olds playing soccer had to wear masks.
I think it's important, and I did this also because our town did the same thing. I emailed them and said, when you drop that requirement, we'll sign up for soccer again. I am not signing up because you are enforcing outdoor masks on children who are engaged in vigorous exercise. And I think that every parent needs to do what we're doing, but also needs to make clear to the people that are setting these expectations that that we are not signing them up for XYZ reason. I'm not renewing my aquarium membership, and I'm telling them why. I'm telling them because you enforce masks on my 4-year-old, and that's not something that I am paying for because that we're not going to go and we're not going to use our membership. And I'm also, when I'm in the car and I have a quiet 15 minutes where nobody's screaming, I'll call 311 and I'll just leave a message for the county executive. Hey, and I just complain about everything now. Like, not just my Karen thing that I was doing for months was complaining about how the libraries were running. And I'm like, you don't have them open. I put a hold on a book and it's not available for 3 weeks. And then I have to sign up for a pickup window that is 15 minutes long and I have to book it a week in advance. And you're quarantining books for 3 days. That's why it's taking weeks to get a book, because you're quarantining books on both sides. And so if we're going to be paying property taxes here, you're going to hear from me weekly. And so once a week, I had it on my to-do list to call the county executive and complain. I called the county executive and complained about the fact that they weren't doing in-person car seat checks. That's not something the fire department was doing. The fire department were doing, they would book a party for you so you could have a birthday party there and you could pay them a donation, but they weren't checking car seats for new parents. And I called once a week and said, like, hi, I'm a new parent and I'd like to have my car seat checked by a car seat certified technician. The county isn't offering that. Why not? Like, it's time to just become squeaky wheels. If they're going to do nothing but complain and set these sort of impositions and restrictions on our lives, then it's time to be squeaky wheels and fight back a little bit.
Yeah. Our town made the mistake of putting our health officer's cell phone number on the website early in the pandemic, so he knows me personally now. We have a close relationship where I text him frequently about my problems around town.
I love it, as it should be.
But yeah, I mean, I think it has to be a squeaky wheel thing, and I think that it has to be just a non-compliance thing too. I'm going to continue 100%. To do what I started to do this spring when the restrictions were lifted and walk into businesses not wearing a mask, and if they don't want me, then I say, see you later, I'll go find a business that does. But
I'm in the same boat. I'm done.
But yeah, and so I hope more people are going to be joining us now that we're heading back down this road going into the fall. So. We're starting school year 3. That's being impacted like this. So hopefully, I hope so. But I wanted to thank you for joining me today. I know it's a lot. I felt guilty even messaging you because I'm like, she has a brand new baby. What is she doing? But
I talked to Tom 4 days after he was born?
I know. Yes. And I told him, I'm like, why did you tell her ask her to be on your show? Leave her alone. What are you doing?
I was on a radio show until midnight last night, which was not my I did not consent to it.
Oh,
They
no.
thought I was supposed to be on for 15 minutes, and they're like, "Oh, we have you booked for the whole hour." And I was like, "Okay."
Oh, no, that's terrible. Well,
It's
thank
pretty
you so
fast.
much for coming on with me and talking
Thanks.
so long and everything else.
No, you're
and
a
I
delight to talk
appreciate
to.
it.
That's the difference.
And thank you. And I'll get it out there today, and hopefully we can get the word out to people to start just not paying attention to any of this nonsense. So
live our lives.
I appreciate it, and I will talk to you soon, hopefully. Clouds rolled in and I said, must have brought the rain from Boston. But you looked at me and I felt the sun.